where would a story mind come from? Why would that be? Okay, well, here's the notion that, dramatic pause for coffee. Okay, here's the notion. If you're going to be communicating with people, the first thing you do is, when you're hurt, you yell, ow, or you scream or something, you know, because it's physical and that's a reaction, a physically based reaction. People begin to recognize when they hear somebody go, ow, well, if I do that when I'm hurt, I hear that, that must mean they're hurt. So they work it backwards, okay? And so you begin to have communication. People who are hungry can start going, you know, and, you know, like that. And either they want sex or they're hungry, okay? So the thing is that when you do this, you get the notion that symbolic sign language builds up. People start to communicate one with another, okay? And as they do, they start then coming up with symbols, and they use the symbols, and the symbols become words, and okay, we put all that stuff behind us. There's a great process there. It's wonderful to investigate, but we don't need to know it, okay? You end up with language. In language, people are telling tales to begin with. Tales, not stories. And here's the difference. A tale is a statement, and a story is an argument. Okay? Tale is a statement, story is an argument. And here's why. A tale just says, if you start out from point A, and then you go through this, and you go through that, and you go through that, and you go through that, and you end up here, okay, then this place is either better or worse than where you started. Logistically,
Could you repeat that again, please? A tale is a statement
and a story is an argument. Okay. Now, you start out from A, and then by the time you get to B, you can look back to the beginning and say it's better or worse than where we started, and also you can make a second judgment. You can say the process of getting there was, even though it was a better place to get, it was so painful getting there, it wasn't worth it. Or, even though it's a worse place to go, the experience was so great that even though we're worse off, we're better for it. Okay, you can do that, you know, and that's a tale. It's a linear progression. And depending on where you end it, that's where the meaning is going to come from. You can end it anywhere. There's no reason why you can't end it here or there. No reason why you can't draw it off out farther. You can do that logistically, or you can do that emotionally. You can say, a person feels like this, and then because of things that happened, he felt like that, and then because of things, he felt like that and that and that, and finally he ended up feeling like this. And you can say that from that point to that point, he's feeling better than he was or worse than he was, and also the emotional gyrations he had to go through between the two, the internal considerations, were either really, really good, and even though he's not feeling quite as good, he resolved a lot of demons along the way, so it's been a worthwhile experience. He knows himself better. Or, even though this place is better, it was such a painful thing to exercise that demon that he wished he hadn't have gone. Even though he feels better, it just hurt too much to get there, and he wouldn't do it again, and he wished he hadn't done it in the first place. You can put the two of these together in a tale. You can say, okay, here's a given situation with somebody who feels like this. And then because he felt like that, he does this. And because he's done that, he feels like this. And because he feels like that, this happens. And then because that happened, he feels like that. And now this happens, and it makes him feel like this, which makes him do that, which makes him feel like this. And by the end, you've got an integrated emotional and logistic progression from one end to the other, and then you make the same kind of judgments at the end, only you can make them for both emotions and logic, for what's going on and also for how somebody feels. Well, that's as far as a tale can take you, like a fairy tale, which basically says, as you can see, starting from here, don't go there. Or, as you can see, starting from here, if you have the opportunity, go there. That's what fairy tales do. And that's all the message is. That starting from where you are, considering the journey and considering the destination, you should take this path or not, and here's an example of somebody who did it to show you that it's either a good one or a bad one. It's better or worse to take it. Okay, now, this tells you that it was a good or a bad journey. But what if you want to say, for all such similar cases, that also holds true? Well, if you're saying that to your own little group or tribe, they probably share your same preconceptions, your same cultural blind spots, and they'll buy it. So that you say, okay, if you start here in this way and it goes here, that was a good path or a bad path to take, so you should do that. And in fact, in all other similar cases that you might run into in business or in home or wherever, you know, the same kind of thing holds true. People may buy it. The minute you start putting that in a recorded form, though, as a minstrel song or a ballad, or you take it and put it into a novel or a teleplay or a screenplay or whatever, you're going to be going to places where people don't share your givens, okay? And when they don't share your givens, they'll accept that this that you've shown is a good or a bad path to take, but They won't accept that they should apply it everywhere because someone will say, well, wait a minute, what if you'd done this, this, and this? Wouldn't that, for this particular situation, wouldn't this have been better? Wouldn't that have been worse, okay, to do that? So the thing is, if you try to say, this is the best or the worst of all the things you might do, instead of just a good or a bad, you now shift it up to best or worst, you're making a blanket statement. You're making a blanket statement that's unsupported. You support it by saying, this one's good, and so clearly you can see it's the best. No, there's no proof, okay? And when you record it and send it to places that people don't share your views, they're going to want the proof. You're not there. If you're explaining it to somebody and they say, show me the proof, you say, well, under the condition you talked about, such and such and such and such, and you can see why mine's still better, the one I proposed, so you should still take this one. Okay, well, what about that one? Well, such and such and such and such, that's why mine's still better. Oh, I see. They'll eventually run out of arguments, and if you're actually correct in your assumption, in your blanket statement, they'll eventually give up and say, I got to give it to you. Everything I can come up with, well, maybe they didn't come up with everything, but everything they could come up with, you've managed to prove yours is better. But when you're not there as the author, when it's recorded and sent somewhere else, you have to put those arguments in ahead of time. When people have a rebuttal to your blanket statement, you have to put in a counter to that rebuttal. In fact, you need a counter to every rebuttal somebody might come up with. So that starting from this situation, you have to put in counters to all the rebuttals that might occur for all the other paths that might have reasonably been taken from this starting point. And when you've done so, you have a complete story, you have a complete argument. You've now argued your point, not just made a blanket statement, shown one example and said that is the best or the worst, even though I've only shown you one. You show all the others and say out of them all, we've explored them all. There's no holes here. And now you can see mine is the best. Now, of course, they could discount you out of hand and say, I don't buy it, but they can't find a flaw in your argument. Okay. So a story then becomes an argument, and when you do that, then you don't have any holes, everybody's satisfied that you've covered everything all the way around. What's happened? Well, you've looked at an issue from all sides, from all angles. You've considered it logistically and emotionally and from every human perspective where somebody could say, you didn't consider this. When you have all those things mixed in together, you have then created, without ever intending to do so, a psychology, because you've got a map of basically all the ways that an issue could be looked at by the human mind so that everything is covered. And you've ended up creating this story mind. Nobody ever set out to do it, and it wasn't complete for many, many years, but in the last few hundred years it's gotten more and more complete as more stories are being told and more things are more popular. And when this happens, things like a protagonist and an antagonist, act breaks and scene breaks and beats, they naturally occur as standing waves in the psychology of story. And it's those standing waves that become the structure. That becomes the story structure. So that's why there is a story mind. It's just nobody ever looked for it there before, and we just stumbled across it because we were dealing with those things and said, oh, what if everything, and then we realized this is why it would come to be, but in the meantime, we have this great model of this story mind.